Hey Internet. So we did a 5 beginner snake video before, and I don't know where she is going, but I decided to do the next one up in this, not a series, but we did the beginner snakes, and what my opinion, it's not necessarily 100% the case, but in my opinion are the best 5 beginner snakes for people just getting started. But this one, I want to do the best 5 kind of intermediate or intern ones. So they still are really good first time pets, but they take a little bit more. And so when I talk about the intermediate ones, it's about a couple different bases. So number one, how much how complicated is their husbandry. You need to pay more attention to the husbandry, the size requirements both of the snake as well as the enclosure that's going into, its availability, kind of the temperament or whatever else that has to do with the animal, and things like that. And so that's kind of what differentiates between beginner and intermediate snakes. And so, first up on this list, if you couldn't tell already by my girl Climby here, is the boa constrictor. This is Severus. She's our boa constrictor. She's our true red tail. She's a Guyana. She came to us as technically a rescue or a surrender. She used to be super, super chunky, but she's been on a pretty good diet. She's slimming down. And for a fat snake, she really loved to climb. And so any chance I have, she's going to be up climbing around and give her a little bit of exercise. She's been out for a couple videos because, you know, how things are going right now. It's giving us plenty of time to dedicate to not only doing more interactions with the animals, but making videos. So we're shooting quite a few today. So our girl Sev, so boa constrictors, in my opinion, my favorite snake, period. These guys are really good intermediate snakes because overall their temperament is really great. It's really docile. They're fairly forgiving when it comes to husbandry. They're not bulletproof. No, I mean, no living animal is, but they can do pretty well. Really, the only thing is you want to make sure that their humidity is really good, kind of like the ball pythons. They're a little bit better when it comes to that, but you really want to make sure you want to have high humidity. But the reason why they're not necessarily beginner snakes is because they just get bigger as a whole. They're not a giant reticulated python, but they very easily attain 6 feet long. I don't exactly know how long this girl is, but boa constrictors easily obtain 6 feet long. It kind of depends on subspecies. Like I said, she's the Guyana, but a lot of the morphs and stuff are the Emperators, or there's Argentines and other ones like that. So there's a wide variety of colors, wide variety of morphs, different places that you can get them from. So kind of anybody who's interested in, specific colors, whatever else, there's kind of a boa for everybody. They are fairly arboreal, if you couldn't tell. She's usually trying to hit the ceiling most of the time when I have her out. But they do like to climb, so if you're able to give them space to climb or give them plenty of time out where they can exercise and climb and move around, they're really great. Boas have a pretty good feeding response, so just as a larger snake, that's a little bit something that you kind of have to be looking out for if you're just getting into them. Is they're a bigger snake, there's more power, there's more speed behind them, so just be a little bit more careful when it comes time to feeding. But otherwise, great snake. I love boas to death. I'm always going to have boas. Okay. Next up is the carpet python. They come in a lot of varieties, different localities and stuff like that. These guys, I would say, are a good intermediate species because they are, number one, very forgiving when it comes to husbandry. With some other snakes, like if you get them too wet, too hot, too cold, you can cause some serious health issues very quickly. These guys are a lot more tolerant when it comes to things like that. They do get to be a little bit larger of a size, depending on localities. Some can get over 9 feet. As well as babies, they can be pretty defensive, pretty quick to strike. And also their food response is, and she's a little huffy right now, she's not a big fan of coming out. But our Brettles isn't shed, so we were able to use Juliet. She's being tolerant enough. I don't like to force the animals to do anything they don't want to, and if they really don't want to come out, we don't bring them out. But she's doing pretty good, but she's still not a big fan of being out a whole lot. But I digress. They have a pretty high prey response. So, if you're ever going into the enclosure tub or whatever, you really got to let them know that, hey, I'm not food. because a lot of times they will kind of come out flying, but they still are really great pets because once they are accustomed to things, they're really great. They're really personable. I wouldn't say they're a really angry or defensive snake once they're kind of out of that baby neonate stage, as well as they are just super, super pretty when it comes to like selectively bred carpet pythons. Like some of like, she's just a kind of basic mutt jungle. So she's jungle and she probably has coastal or whatever else blood in her. I mean, it's the same species of snake, arguably, although that's going to make some carpet people upset. But, you know, she doesn't have any specific lineage, but some lines of, you know, jungle carpets are literally just solid neon highlighter yellow and black. And then there's diamonds, and then there's, you know, centralian carpets, which are like a really cool rusty red and things like that. But these guys, I would say, are very, very good, you know, not beginner, but intermediate snake choice to get into. That's just, they get a little bit larger and they have that pretty good feeding response, are the only things that keep them from being a good beginner snake. So next up are the pine snakes, bull snakes, gopher snakes. Really any snake that is in the Pituophis family. So the Pituophis, that's the scientific name, and that's the bulls, pines, and gophers and stuff like that. This is Moose. Sorry, little guy. He's still a little twitchy. He's getting used to it. We've got him fairly recently. Here in Colorado, you're actually not allowed to sell bull snakes. You can have them, and so if you're going to acquire them, you either have to wild catch them, which I'm not the biggest fan of, or they can be gifted to you. And that's how we got him. Somebody was trying to downsize, and a lot of people were asking for this bull snake, but you know, they're not necessarily for everybody, for basically one specific reason that makes them a little bit different than other things. So the bull snakes and pine snakes are really cool. Their scales are very different. They're keeled, so it's kind of like a rattlesnake scale. So they're not like those smooth, you know, diamond-shaped ones. They're keeled, and so you can feel they have a very different texture to them. I don't know if it's going to show up in the camera or not, but they're all endemic to North America. They are very widespread. Bull snakes and gopher snakes are technically they're the same species, but there's several different subspecies. So kind of like with the boas and he is going for a ride. So we'll wait for him to come out in a second. Maybe, maybe not. All right. Okay. Sorry about that. Don't exactly remember. But so like I said, they are native to North America. Bull snakes are very widespread. Bull snakes and gopher snakes, they're technically the same species, just different subspecies. Even and then between the different bull snakes and gopher snakes, there's even different distinguishing factors. So like animals in Texas look entirely different, behave a little bit different, and probably can't even brumate properly if the further north you get, like into northern Colorado, and then even further up, even as high as like Canada. But I digress. The reason why these guys are an intermediate isn't because they get super huge, although some of the pines and bull snakes, they can get, you know, 6, 7, 8 feet long. It's still fairly manageable because they're colubrids, they're pretty center-bodied. It's that they can have a bit of an attitude. And what I mean by that is they will try to run away, but they're also more prone to threat displays and posturing. And so that's that very iconic thing they'll do. They will waggle their tails in the leaf litter, and they will raise up, and they will hiss and huff very, very loudly. And that's a big deterrent for a lot of people. But truth be told, most of the time, once you get them out, they're perfectly fine. Some of them, you know, they're colubrids, so they'll must, and they will huff and hiss, and they can be a little bitey if they don't want to be messed with. But truth be told, these guys are really great, great species. People, you know, everybody wants the tropical species, like the pythons and boas and stuff. But we have some really cool native snakes here in Colorado and in North America in general. And bull snakes and gopher snakes are really, really cool. They're great, manageable pets. They don't get to a big size. You know, because they're native, you don't have to worry as much about humidity, heat, and stuff like that. You know, they still need a human hide. They still need a big water bowl, and, you know, they can brumate. They still need a hot spot, but they're not as, you know, it's not as hide ranging and not as specific as some other animals. But, oh, you're doing such a good job, Moose. Oh, you're doing so good. This is his first time on camera, really his first time out in general. So he's doing really good. So the next one on the list is, we don't actually have it because we're technically not supposed to have them in Colorado, and that is the hognose snakes. It's a little weird here in Colorado. Like, we can wild collect 4 of them according to Fish and Wildlife, but then we're not allowed to keep or sell them. So I don't exactly know what we're supposed to do because we can legally harvest up to 4 a year. But anyway, they're a good intermediate snake species, but there are a few caveats to them as to why they're not necessarily the best beginner snake. Number one is they are rear fang venomous. And so what that means is that they don't have a more evolved delivery system like a viper or a cobra or something like that. It's not even a true fang. It's just this kind of altered ridged tooth in the back of their mouth that the venom actually trickles down. And so that means to technically envenomate something, they have to really get a hold of it and chew it down. That being said, they've evolved to do that, so they can actually do it pretty easily. But it's a fairly mild toxin. It's really not that toxic, especially anything you relate to like rattlesnakes or anything like that. But it is something that really should be, brought up. They're not really inclined to bite at all. They will do this kind of bluff bite thing where they'll just kind of like bump their nose into your hand, but they're very, very disinclined to bite in general. And there's only been like 1 or 2 documented cases of a bit of an actual reaction to their venom, and that was because it was an allergic reaction, which can happen with any sort of protein in general. But that being said, that's probably the reason why we're not really allowed to keep them in Colorado. That, and it's also a native animal, and things get kind of weird in Colorado about native animals. But they are a good snake as a pet if you're allowed to keep them, because they don't get very large. Like a big female only gets about 2 feet long, so you can keep him in a smaller enclosure. Other than like, some of the eastern hogs or the South American tricolor hogs, they don't need a lot of humidity. They don't need a lot of space. You just need a good hide, because they do like to hide in a good little and a decent basking spot, and that's all you really need. The other thing is that as babies, they can be very finicky eaters. Out in the wild, they eat a lot of toads and stuff like that, and so because in the hobby, we want to feed everything rodents because it's the easiest to do, and they all can eat them, and it doesn't necessarily do anything negative to them. So we all want everything switching over to rodents. So a lot of the babies have a hard time getting started going, but once they do, they're really great. They're really hardy snakes, and they're really, really cool. Like I said, we don't have any here in Colorado, so we don't have any here at jzsreptiles, but they can be a very good snake if you're allowed to keep them where you are. All right, this last one might seem a little weird considering the species, but I do have a couple reasons as to why I say that they're not an advanced species, and that's the Burmese Python. This guy, Fiero, is a little special case. Where we are in Colorado, and in Colorado, there's no restrictions when it comes to the size of constrictors, but in different cities and stuff, it can get stuff that way. So we're not actually allowed to have the big, big constrictors like retics and berms, but because Fiero is special, as we've addressed in previous videos, and you can check those out after this, he's never going to get big. He's 4.5 years old. So he's never going to get to this giant state. Like, he's maybe 5 feet long now. And so most of his growing is kind of over it. And because of how he is, he's just not going to grow very quickly at all. But the reason why I say that berms are more of an intermediate species rather than a advanced species is most of the time they're fairly docile. When it comes to big, big snakes. Yes, babies can be kind of huffy and puffy a lot of the times. And I've worked with large constrictors before, with big retics, with big berms. Never any rocks, but I have worked with them in the past. And really the only thing that is something to consider is just how big they are. So a big snake means big enclosure, big poops, and it's still a snake, and there's no such thing as technically a tame snake, but you have pretty docile, very tolerant animals, and Burmese pythons as a whole are a very tolerant, docile species. What are you doing, buddy? You derpy boy. Hi. And so as far as the husbandry goes, they can be prone to respiratory infections, but if you have a large enough enclosure and you're keeping an eye on your humidity and temps like you would with any other species, then you're pretty much set to go. It's just that they just get so big. And yes, that can be a bit of an issue, but as far as husbandry goes, they're really not that bad. You just need a lot of room, and you know what you're doing, so you need to do a lot more research. But they're easier to care for than say like a rainbow boa or like a green tree python. They are not terribly expensive until you get into like the crazy designer morphs. Like I think Bob Clark has a lot of pied Burmese pythons now. You're looking at like a $5,000-6,000 animal. These guys aren't too crazy priced. But anyway, that's why that's I know a lot of people might think Burmese pythons you're crazy, but as a whole they're really not that terribly difficult to hold to hold on to and to keep. And as long as you do the research and you talk to people and you know that you're and what you're investing in, then they can be a really great, fairly easy to keep species. They just get big. But anyway, that is my opinion on 5 intermediate species, and there are a lot more species out there that cover in between those. I'm mostly just staying away from the very advanced ones, so venomous stuff that requires very specific things that are very prone to going downhill if not being kept properly, like rainbow boas or green trees and things like that. So that's why I'm kind of sticking with just kind of these ones that are fairly readily available in the hobby and that do in fact make very good pet snakes. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you can. Hit that bell notification if you could. It really does help when you do hit the bell notification to alert for alerts. YouTube is kind of wonky to where if everyone is actually using that bell and they're clicking on the links when they're alerted, they make it so we're more visible on YouTube. It gets more in people's related searches and stuff like that. So that's really appreciated if you could do that. Please, 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 please. Once again, I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any suggestions, comments, ideas for future videos, how you can kind of help improve on the videos or anything else like that, please let me know down in the comments. You can always message me on Facebook or on Instagram, jzsreptiles. Hopefully we'll have a website up soon. Things are kind of, up in the air and in turmoil right now, so getting web hosting and stuff like that's taken a little bit of a backseat, but we're also working on just the animals in general. Hope you guys did like this video. Please stay tuned for more. We're going to have plenty of updates when it comes to breeding snakes and just more content in general. Like I said, if you have any ideas or questions or things like that, let me know. I'll catch you guys next time, and I hope you have a good day.